Okay, I think we have 5 minutes until we broadcast the event. Are you guys ready?
Okay, chị.
Where's Alan?
Oh, I think we should mute our because let me see. I think yeah. Let me turn off this YouTube thing because it's actually like echoing.
Yeah, I've muted the YouTube, but we need to be able to watch it for the chat, right?
Oh, Vit will help us to capture all of those questions and then paste it in the chat box in our Zoom so that we don't have to switch between slices.
Oh, okay. So do we need to open the live stream?
No, you don't have to. You would just need to present here. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I won't. It's just more than, too many screens keeping track of, and it's.
I know. That's why Vit is going to help us with those important tasks.
Okay. Awesome. Where is he? He's gone.
I think they just mute their camera. They're still here. Yeah, they're still here. The panelist is for attendees. Okay.
Okay.
I'll hit broadcast. Okay. Can't see how many people. Oh, the attendees, 3 are here already. Okay. We'll wait for a few minutes and then we'll start our section real soon. Okay, I'm pulling out all the instruction, the introduction to make sure that I have a proper introduction for you guys. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think it's 6 p.m. already, and I think we should start our section. All right. Thank you so much for joining in to our webinar. Actually, this is the second webinar hosted, a part of the International Women's Day by Google Women Techmaker and in collaboration with Women with Tech, and welcome you all. Hopefully this section can give you some good perspective about how to reframe your career in tech. And I would like to give a warm welcome to our guest speaker today. I'm going to introduce them briefly. And during the second and third part of the section, where we're going to have a panelist discussion, I'll give a full introductions about their bio, because I know that they're accomplished a lot in their career and they'll have a lot of things to share with us. I would like to introduce Awa Lokhan. She's one of my fellow Women Techmaker Ambassador from Singapore, and she's currently a full stack developer in Tesla. Hi, Awa, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello everyone, it's so lovely to meet all of you. Though I cannot see any of you, but I know you guys are lovely. So
thank you, lovely. And the second speaker on the panel is Mark Evans. He's a front-end developer at NHQ Asia. He's a very good friend of mine who we have learned programming almost at the same time, right? But now he's a full front-end developer, it's a full software engineer. Mark, would you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone. It's great to know you're watching.
Okay. Behind the scenes is my assistant, Vic Huang, who will help facilitate all the technical issue of today's. So if you have any technical issues, please feel free to send us a private message on our Facebook page, and he will help you to sort it out, or in this Zoom channel as well. He will help you to sort out those technical issues. So without further ado, I'm gonna start our first section of today. So I will going to give the short introduction about our program. Women with Tech is the first public STEM program for diversity and inclusion in Vietnam. And our program is endorsed and funded by the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Consulate Ho Chi Minh City, and also supported by different developer communities, such as developer circles from Facebook and Google Developer, and particularly Women Techmaker on Wisely. These are our one of the key men trainers in our program. We are very proud that our program is one of very rare that have most trainers are women. We have front-end developer Ruby, when we have back-end developer Thắm Lê, and we have a designer Fia, and we also have and I'm also the lead of this program. And as well as many other support from my fellows in the industry. So I just want to give you an overview about what is like in the tech industry up until today. So in 2018, these are the greatest programmer in the world. So as you can see from all of this image, all of these names here, there's only one woman, and the rest are like, you know, Facebook creator, Bill Gates, all familiar names, and only one female engineer got listed under this greatest names in greatest name of programmers in the world, and that's 2018. What about 2019? It's actually the same list. So we would love to contribute to changing this. So hopefully in the next 3 or 5 years, maybe we'll have some, you know, like some more women from Southeast Asia or somewhere about the world to be up on this list. So what are the developer roles and gender? I got this graph from Stack Overflow. It's a good Stack community where you can find a lot of technical helps, as well as, you know, like exchange knowledge and other informations. So they have a lot of useful data that we can reference in terms of, you know, what is like in the tech industry overall. And this is a database based on around 80,000 professionals in tech. As you can see from here, the ratio of men and women as starting from very low, so educator and academic researcher, 1 in 10 is women. And as move up into a more technical roles, the ratio of women's numbers actually start decrease significantly. In 2019, we see a slight different, again, sorry, you can feel free to screenshot the slide if you want, because I think it's gonna be helpful for you to use as a reference in a later time. In 2019, again, we see actually the number of numbers of women participate in certain roles in tech increase quite a bit. And we can see here more data scientists and business analysts, machine learning specialists, and front-end developers. The number of women participating in these roles are, there's more roles for women. The ratio also narrowed down as well. And as we move up into technical field, we see that the numbers of those technical top position are still, majority are still male developers, such as DevOps specialist, system administrator, engineering manager, and such more. So with that, we create a lot of workshops and programs to help closing this gap. So if you're interested, you can start to go into our page and see those technical topics that we have teach, and we also share those learning resources online as well. And recently we feel very honored that since the beginning of our launch of the program, Women with Tech is listed on the official global map of Women Tech Maker. So after so many years, we haven't had any mark in the global map. Finally, we start to have the community exclusively for women and teaching women technical skill to help them advance in their career. Okay, get back to what are the popular programming language in 2020? I got this question asked amongst those registered guests for this event. So I just want to give you, an overall look. As you can see, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and SQL. Those are for web programming is quite still quite very popular, and Python. Okay, so here's the breakdown of those top 10 programming language that I've mentioned. So as I mentioned earlier, you see JavaScript is a famous programming language for the web. I still see that is, play a major role and a very popular. So if you want to start, pick up something in introductory or beginning, you can start with JavaScript. I know some friends of mine also pick up Python. The language is quite easy. It's quite close to the human language, so it's easier to understand and it's easier to start programming right away. I want to give you a look about what are the tech development process. So there are multiple sections in multiple steps in creating a tech product. First of all, we have to understand about the business requirements, information architectures, and then design. Here we see a lot of UI, UX designers we've often heard. Technical developments, where we have front end, back end, mobile development, data science, machine learning, blockchain, AI. And then we have QA and QC, quality. We have deployment. So here's all DevOps, system engineer, database admin, and network engineers. So this is very important when you look into this this graph. And then you can start, see what part of your current skill that you have, and you can start, look at what are certain areas that you're still lacking of, and then slowly build up those technical skills. And right now I see a lot of women in tech field solely for non-tech position within this process. So mostly they're more into either business or marketing requirements, and mostly into UI UX designer, QA QC. But if you want to venture out into those skills and certain area, certain skill set, and you need to develop within this product development process. And I do believe that in the future, in whatever position that you're in, you should have a knowledge, a little bit of knowledge, the holistic knowledge of all of this step in the process, because you want to be able to work with teams from different departments. You want to have a broad perspective about business and the markets, so you can start building the product that makes sense to the user. And many way that developers and as well as tech professionals use to improving their skill, very often they teach themselves a new language or framework without taking a formal course. Even for me myself, I also like learn from different online resources as well, like online courses about programming, software development, and you can also receive online on-the-job training in software development. I see there's many jobs say they can hire fresher or junior developer. So that is the best way you can learn. And then for some people, we can contribute to open source software. You actually build certain features. That's how you can learn. Participate in a hackathon. I think it's a great experience if you ever have the courage to join those events. You're gonna learn so much more about your fellow, especially people with high technical skill, and how they can work under pressure, work under teamwork, and in presenting and tech pitching. You can learn so much from those activities. Here in Women Meet Tech, we do host certain pitching competitions throughout the year. And this is open to all non-technical professionals as well. We'll train you, we'll give you certain technical skills and resources so you can learn, and then you can participate in certain mini hackathon. So that's where you can, like learn with the real hands-on experience. Again, those you can have a further look into this, but those are the top way that tech and non-tech professionals in the tech industry will actually use to, especially tech professional, use to improve their technical knowledge, continually improve their technical knowledge all the time. So I just want to point out some of the common perceptions about Vietnamese female coders. This apply uniquely to the target audience that I have shared my story with. So since the start of Women Meet Tech and Tech and Code, I think we'll reach over 1,000. I think it's almost 2,000 audiences now. So very common. These are the things that's come up to me repeatedly. That there's certain perceptions that that impose on Vietnamese women, saying that, hey, computer science is not meant for girls, because it's too dry, it's not feminine. Not many job prospects for women in tech, especially for programming. You better do something else, such as marketing or sales or finance. And thirdly, this is the work environment where there's all guys, and it's not suitable for women. And especially for Asian women, we often have the imposed roles, gender roles, which is we're expected to be in charge of domestic work, taking care of the house and the kids. And last but not least, I think this is quite funny, that if the girl or woman study too much or too smart, and she has a very high college degree, or when she go into Master of Computer Science, etc., it's a lot harder for her to get settled down and have a family. But I believe that all of these things, all of these perceptions are wrong. And I hope that this program, as well as our female trainers, as well as what you see from the Women in STEM program, can help the society change the perceptions about Vietnamese women and in general about women's roles in tech. But did you know that many of the first computer programmers and coders were women? I do have proof. So in 1913, the first group of women gathered together and do a lot of complicated calculations at the Harvard College Conservatory. They're called human computers. And those are the first women that building the starting foundations of, I believe, computers and computer science. And the two women operating a very complicated machine in the US Army, I believe this is in 1947. And in 1967, the Cosmopolitan articles, like the Cosmopolitan articles now, is mostly about fashion. You know, we see the it girl is usually the fashion models and etc. But back in 1967, the it girl is actually the computer girls. So what's changed? It wasn't until the college like Princeton, MIT, and Stanford create their first CS program. And those to design those programs are from a male perspective, and computers labs were almost exclusively designed based on a male perspective. So I think is a good time to look back into history and a good time to start, like putting effort and change the status quo of, women being the minority in the tech workplace. And we totally can do that. I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes. What I cannot create, I do not understand. That's why I think that we all should, pick up some basic programming and join certain workshops, so then we can have some hands-on experience. Without doing those, we will never understand, like how technologies around us is functioning and how it's really impacting our life, and how we can leverage those skills to enhance in our career and get enhancement in our career. So usually we'll teach attendees to for those important skills that I just mentioned, like certain transferable skill in tech, pitching, web programming basic, how do you communicate with developers, and launching and testing a tech products. I think those are important skills, and we already did this training for a lot of attendees, both men and women and other communities, and we've seen a significant impact on helping them to like understand about a technical perspective, and also help them to become more outstanding in their job. So if you want more information, you can start following our page. And we'll give you a lot more information and updates. Just give you a small break. I just found this funny image. At the moment, the pandemic has been quite serious, so make sure you're, taking good care of yourself and put on a mask. This is the photo from 1918 where the mask was wearing a mask. So please stay safe and stay healthy. And again, staying at home so you can, like stop the transmissions of the virus and flattening the curve. So now we're going to go into the second sections where I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of the hands-on activities, because I don't want to talk too much all the time. I think this is the time for you, the audience, to start, like do some small exercise that can help you to kind of change your perspective a little bit and to narrate your career in tech. So what is reframing your narrative? So a lot of people say, I'm not too confident about my skill. I don't know where to start. But hey, like you first have to have confidence about yourself. And you should know what your expertise are. And this field exercise coming will help you to overcome this imposter syndrome. I believe that if you're in the workplace, sometimes managerial training will give you some training material about this, but I would want to reemphasize on how to overcome this, because this is very important, especially when you're a woman working in tech. Very often, I myself also run into this cycles of imposter cycle. So I got really excited about, like certain opportunities, and I would want to, like get the most out of the opportunities, and I'm learning new skill, and I'm trying every way to, like make it happen. But at the same time, I'm worried and I'm panicked because there's a lot of things out there that I don't know about. And because, like I'm still quite new in the tech industry, and I'm starting a lot later than some of the people like software engineers who, study their computer science degree for many years. And then sometimes, like I have a lot of procrastinations, and when I got motivated, I got, like do a lot of learning and training all at once, that I can feel so overwhelmed. And then I got some success from doing all of those. And then, sometimes I got some failure, and I got denial, self-doubt. All of those things just keep, like coming back, even for me. And I believe some of my fellows, some of my teammates also experience the same thing. I believe you do too. So I want you to know that this is okay, and this is normal, that you experience those imposter syndromes, and this is the cycle, and we can break it. So we often say, I'm just, like, I only did part of the work, and mostly it's my coworker, even though you're actually a person who actually do a lot of work. And then sometimes you say, I'm not so decent. I guess I'm just, decent at public speaking, so I do it every now and then. I was just lucky that I got my first programming job. So I think you want to, look into the language that you often use to describe yourself, because that's actually a sign of the imposter syndrome. So what we should do about it? So number one, acknowledge and move forward. Seriously, everyone experienced this imposter syndrome. So as long as we know that we're in this together, then we start to feel less panic, less fear. Option two, we can recontextualize. So even for the experts are not people on pedestal. There are people who share what they know. You actually own your expertise, and you can share it, Option three, collect the data. So now I think you can take 2 minutes to write down 10 accomplishments, and then you can share with us in the chat box your top 2 accomplishments. So I'm gonna give you time, and during that, I'm gonna let 2 of our panelists to start, give you an example of what it's like when they're doing this exercise. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and give back the floor to our panelists. So in your own time, please take 2 minutes to write down your 10 accomplishments, and please share it within the chat box in our section. Okay, Iwar, you want to start with the accomplishment?
Okay. Yes, sure. So
Ladies first.
Okay. So I think so the major accomplishment which I had in this year was I recently joined my job, and within a year I got promoted as a senior dev in the Singapore company. So I'm handling a lot of, thank you. I'm handling a lot of projects independently, including the COVID task which we are doing. So, thinking about that through and stuff. So it's pretty exciting. Another thing is I recently crossed 3,000 reads on one of my blog, which I wrote on Medium. So
Wow.
it was like a pretty big thing, because I don't write professionally, but because of that, I actually I became an in-house writer for one of the tech blog called Code with Mosh. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it. So it teaches you everything. So I became their in-house writer. The third thing is I actually learned how to program a game in C++ using Wasm.
C++.
Within a week, I have no prior experience in C++. I have no idea what C++ is. So if you decide you want to do that, you can just easily do it. So just keep aside all your self-doubts. Just focus 1 hour at a time and just try to learn and try to get the output. And that's how you can do everything. So I think so, yeah, these are most of my recent
That's
accomplishments.
amazing. How do you feel when you share this with all of us?
Weird.
Weird, I know, but that's how you break those barriers of, of
Yeah.
yourself, having the self-doubt. You actually, if you start sharing this more, then you feel more confidence. I've heard the saying about, fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
But like just showing that, hey, I do have this expertise and I do have this confidence, and here I am, I'm sharing with you guys. So
Actually, it's a good practice because during interviews, you generally have to say your accomplishments.
Exactly,
It's like,
exactly.
if you're used to saying it, then it comes naturally to you and you can think about all the amazing things you have done and get that job. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Mark, it's your turn.
Okay, cool. Well, I would say the first one that I thought of was that I taught myself how to program fairly late in life. I'm 37. So, too old according to some of
Someone
my
37.
colleagues. But I wanted to share that in case there are any panelists who have that same kind of fear, or any participants. So yeah, that would be it. I taught myself entirely and figured out a good path very quickly. So I just kind of navigated, as everyone is kind of starting out their career where they figure out, what language should I learn? What should I do? For me, I think I picked the right thing very quickly. And that leads into the second accomplishment, where I ended up almost immediately getting a job that is able to leverage my previous skill set and as well as the new, and that that lands me working with a team where we have a lot of good engagement, a lot of trust at this time, mainly because I wouldn't say I held out for the right job, but I was very targeted in looking for the right job, and found one that is in a company that is not with a client that is not exactly the same as my previous industry, but it's basically the same thing. So prior to this, I was managing at Wall Street English, which is in basically education technology. I mean, their methodology is a blended learning methodology to combine tech and the classroom. And the company not the company that I now work for, NFQ is an outsourcing company, but the client that I work for on the team is making tennis smart. And basically what we do is we provide tools for coaches to help people improve their tennis game through machine learning and through visualizations of data and recording of matches, et cetera. And I mean, the parallel between my old career and job and skill set and this one is uncanny, except now I'm there building the program. So I'm quite excited about that.
So how do you feel when you share this with the audience?
Well, I would agree with a bit weird, because I'm not actually the type of person who likes to kind of boast or brag or anything. But it felt nice because I hadn't really thought about it that much recently, and as kind of you wanted us to give an example, I had to go through and think, like, what is it that I'm happy about? And it's quite good. I mean, kind of, especially in these times that we're going through right now, it was a nice boost.
Yes, lovely. Thank you so much for your heart-to-heart sharing with the audience. So with that, I think it will lead into our panel discussion. So I don't have to introduce you guys because your profile is already amazing. So, okay, let me put on the slide sharing again. Okay. So so just take it as, like our conversation, like a fire chat conversation to share with the audience. And please, all the attendees, audience, please, if you have any question, please don't hesitate to share with our panelists today, because it is a very rare chances that we got experts from, like different countries, different perspective. And we can answer, like your kind of like your one most wanting to be answered kind of questions live right here. So, okay, let me start with pulling several topics. So this is our beautiful photos. um, so again, Mark Evans, he a front-end developers at HQ Asia. Iwa is a full-stack developers in Testra and a women technical ambassador in Singapore. And I myself is Leah Chuk, and I'm the program lead at Women Mid Tech and Women Ambassador for Vietnam. And we're here, to share our stories, share experience and tips. And we also want to listen to you, whichever questions you want to ask for us. So we'll start with the first discussion topic. What are the tech scene in Vietnam versus Singapore and Canada? Maybe I'll start with me and Iwa because we kind of close to each other. Mark, you also work in Vietnam, so I share about your perspective. And of course, you have some experience in Canada as well, you can share. So we'll start with Iwa first.
So for Singapore, actually, the technical scene is because it's more over like people here, at least most of them are immigrants. Native Singaporeans are not that much in the tech field, so the specialized skill is a lot. So in terms of opportunities, I feel most of the people here work as in a company, not a lot of startup driven native people, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot of startup. It has amazing fintech startups because it's the financial hub of Asia. So if you are like very interested in getting into fintech, if you come to Singapore, you will have hundred of opportunities. Like actually, because I work for a telco company and I literally feel like an outlier because all of my friends are working for a bank or some other company.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if you are actually interested, because every sector has a different set of technical requirements. So I mostly work for product-based companies. So if you go for a bank, the type of skills which you need and the way you have to think is different than what you do for a product company. So it's like, I would say that you don't have to worry. You don't have to take the perfect right step. It's just go into it. If you feel you're interested in this particular sector, just explore. Because it's very easier. Actually, people feel that if you go into one sector, you just have to stay there. That's not true. I was first in media and entertainment. Then I moved I was into online e-commerce. And then now I'm in telco. So the next one I want to go is in health sector. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
think
I mean, yes.
Yeah. So here in Vietnam, I think our e-commerce has been growing very, very significantly as well, right? I think it's on board with those in the US in terms of logistical and in terms of technology adaptation. I think for fintech as well, I've seen quite a lot of numbers of fintech startup company got investment and healthcare startup. What about how do you think, Mark?
About Vietnam,
Vietnam, yes, and then
it's quite obviously quite an exciting space in Vietnam, I think, and that's a big part of the reason why, when I did change careers, I chose to stay here. I mean, another is that it is home, and I really did want to stay here. But it's just the energy, the sense that there's opportunity here. The startup culture is huge, and it just, for me, it definitely seemed a lot more interesting and had a lot more opportunities than, say, going back to Canada. I mean, there's just not just in tech, in every sector, there is just so much energy and entrepreneurship in Vietnam. So it's a good place to be at the time. And kind of going over to Singapore as well, it is a place that I'd be interested in living in the future. And I felt that being here and developing skills here, as well as a network here, would probably give me a better chance of going to Singapore if I wanted to in the future. I mean, as a Canadian, I think going back to Canada is always an option for me. But I'm sure that a lot of participants would be, considering at that question, would I want to try to work in Vietnam or in Singapore or in Canada? On that front, and for myself as well, when I was looking at, would it be better to go back in Canada? Certainly, one aspect of it was that the pay was higher. but the cost of living is also a lot higher too.
Yeah,
So
that's true. I was
think
gonna
it
say.
balances out. And it's cold too, very cold. So I think again, I did look into it, and of course, Toronto, our largest city, is a big space right now. There are a good combination of both large enterprises that are a great place to get a chance to start and learn. When you were talking about Singapore being mainly companies, I feel like that's what I saw from Canada as well. Although there are startups, it's definitely not as big a part of the culture as in Vietnam. So that said, Canada is a good place to, if you have the opportunity. If you're a student, for example, it is relatively open. I know the Canadian government does provide visas and work permits for up to 3 years after you graduate, for example. So it's a good place to start a career that way and work in. So for example, if you were in Vietnam, you may want to aim for a larger company such as Grab to really learn the fundamentals and get a good career going before you venture out into the startup community. Canada has a lot of opportunities like that. I think they're all three countries are quite exciting. I think it kind of depends on what
you really want. Yeah.
What you want, and also what you can do. Where you can be. I mean, Vietnam is a fantastic place. I mean, as I said, I stayed here because it seemed much more exciting to me than I did look and apply in Singapore. I looked in Canada, but I didn't look very hard in either Singapore or Canada. Basically focused on Vietnam because it's just the opportunity here is incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's one of the reasons why I choose to come back to Vietnam and start my career and my journey in tech, because I see the growth rate in Vietnam is growing very strong. So if you want to grow, say, the tech scene is growing so fast in certain percentage, you can grow as fast, and then you hit the ceiling of the growth rate, the entire industry, right? So if for developed countries, like they're already so developed that there's not so much of room for you to grow. And secondly, when you're in Vietnam, it's basically my hometown. So I got a lot of support from my family. I don't have to worry too much about, being like a foreign workers with, like visa issues. So then I can really focus on learning new skills. And here, because it's a home country, so I can start, like bridging between my existing skill into the technical skill that I have in my own time. And then when I look into Singapore, and like once you pass that phase, and if you want to explore more of the international exposure, I think what Mark mentioned was, you look into a large company with good names, and then you be, like learning those in international and corporate environment. And then once you have those credentials, and you can start venture out into a country like Singapore, and even further out into, the US or Canada. So it really depends on what you want, yes, and also like what is the environment that can be fully supportive and fully it's like a push to like an endorsement to your career path. So I think in three countries there are always opportunities everywhere. Just depends on where your stage of your career is and what makes the most sense to you in terms of a career development and your expertise. So thank you. And then we move on to the second topics. We talk about the job markets. Is there any particular skill, or how companies in Singapore, in Canada, in Vietnam test their professionals, that their applicants to be in the company for certain job positions? What is like in Singapore?
Is it like the tech skills you're asking about? Or
Yeah, like tech skill. Yeah.
Okay. So I think so JavaScript is, you need to be a very proficient with JavaScript in terms of full stack development. So you can do both backend as well as front end, because as far as I know, in my company, when we interview someone, it's mostly on JS. If you don't know React JS, that's fine. If not work with certain framework, that's fine. You should know core JavaScript, and you should be very clear with examples. That's, I think so, one of the things which lacks over here. I think so the way interviews are conducted is quite different, because I've interviewed for companies in India and then in Singapore, so I can compare.
Mm.
So when I was interviewing for Singapore, most of the interviews are very much focused on how did you solve a particular problem, in the sense, explain me if you have applied this particular concept. What exactly did you gain? What exactly did you lose? And I mean, you should know that in and out. That's fine. That's one of the things which separates you from the crowd. And second thing is, I think so, one of the emerging uh, job market is test automation. That's actually pretty
Test
interesting
automation.
because automation engineers are like everywhere. And you need that because most of the companies are moving into automation. And one thing is, because there are a lot of major companies like MNCs in Singapore, they have a lot of legacy code, right? So they need actually people who can automate those stuff, including a DevOps engineer. And then test automation is like, they always have a permanent job opening in every company. So I feel like if you actually learn, if you're interested in that, because test automation now doesn't just include testing, it includes development as well. You develop the entire framework which automates your system. So there is, I think so, there is like a misconception that a quality analyst engineer doesn't have to code. That's no longer the case. Everybody has to code.
Yeah, everyone has to code.
Yeah.
Even for a non-tech position now, I think you have
Correct.
to understand like the basic logic behind all of those. I think we have an early discussions about, you know, what you see in terms of like trainings in Singapore. There are like 50% of trainings for leadership and
Yeah.
managerial, and then 50% for actual technical. Why is the reason so?
So Singapore is actually oversaturated with technical communities and technical positions. So because most of the people hired here in Singapore are immigrants, they are skilled worker. So they are already well versed with technical abilities. Now, in order to reach to the next level of their career, they need certain managerial skills. They need to actually polish their verbal skills, or a lot of skills which you generally don't get to actually use when you're doing technical or coding. You will not interact. That is why actually people tend to they actually are very interested in learning about how to do public speaking, and then how to actually have a talk with anyone without feeling uncomfortable. Because I think so, this is like, if you can naturally do it, it comes easily to you. But for a lot of people, especially in a programming background, they're not very good with actually communicating their ideas. Like, you might have amazing ideas, but you are so technical that the business people don't understand, right? So what
That's
you
very
don't
interesting.
understand.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's actually the other way around when it's come to Vietnam. I see a lot of non-technical training, you know, like leadership training is all over the places. But when it's come to like real technical trainings, is basically just within the small communities of developers. And I see many familiar faces all the time. So, Mark, did you agree with me? Maybe you can share some more of your perspective on this.
Yeah, I was going to say that I have kind of the unique experience of having worked, because I went through the interview with the local team, including the PM here, and then with the team in Germany. Essentially, I was kind of not re-interviewed, but through working with them, you can tell they're trying to assess, what your skills are, what you can do. And I definitely noticed, here in Vietnam, the emphasis and the focus was clearly on, can you code? Are you an expert at coding? Like, do you know? And it was the interview was, I mean, if I think back on it, I'm not even sure if I would be able to answer the interview questions now well, because they were just so
Technical,
rigidly technical. But you can train for that. So that interview doesn't have to be a barrier. But the things that I was interviewed for by the local team, and in comparison to what I actually do, was very different, right? And in reality, your actual coding job is going to be much more about problem solving. You're not going to need to be like the absolute expert in every single piece of syntax of the language you're learning. You need to be able to quickly search, quickly solve a problem, look at a problem. You do need to have a solid base. And I agree 100% with what Owa said. Like, frameworks are not as important. You really need to understand the fundamentals of JavaScript, or whichever language that you're learning and you're trying to work in. But yeah, when it comes down to the team that I work with in Germany, they're much more, well, I mean, even today, we just had a call and there's a problem, and I'm not a backend developer, but I do my own things. I'm aware of backend development, and we had a situation where we may need to build something which involves a little more support from someone else, doing backend work. And I said, I'd be willing, and they jumped all over it immediately. Okay,
Wow.
we trust you. We know you've learned this, and that was really cool. But it's also like, I noticed a clear difference there. The team in Europe said, "Oh yeah, you've learned this, you can learn that." Whereas I find that in my experience working with teams in Vietnam, it's a bit more, you have to have that expertise already in order to be able to do the problem. So it's interesting. That said, that is why I see, this what Leah is talking about with the need for training in kind of in generally broadening communication and other aspects, other skills, including, I would say, the awareness of how to leverage people's talents and skills a bit more flexibly, because the market is, and coding itself is moving that way. Things change so fast. You can't already know it. You have to be able to learn something new. And I think
I think so. The common thing between all these discussions is you should be willing to not know stuff and still
and to learn.
Yes.
So
yes, you will always not know stuff.
And I think it's a good thing, because things in tech keep constantly changing. So it's just a matter if what you're learning now is kind of on par with the rest of the people, the rest of the like tech savvy top tier engineers. So it's just a matter if you're willing to learn and how fast you're learning. So it's gonna give like a little lower the barrier of entry for newbies if you were to be in tech. So it's just based on my experience. I remember when I first started learning React Native to build the mobile applications, I struggle a lot. But I do understand that whatever engineers in the room who's studying with me, they're kind of the same with me. They have to learn it, like update it constantly. So,
you and I put ourselves through a needless amount of torture because we tried to learn React Native before we knew JavaScript.
But actually, it's reverse engineering. Once you get there, you come back and you're like, okay, now I know. I got this aha moment all the time. Like, now I know why it's the way it is. That's funny. Okay, one more thing. During this pandemic kind of trying time, do you think that people in the tech industry are more like the tech jobs are more like recession proof? Do you think so? Like, we tend to have jobs still compared to other segments, sectors such as retail or, other, just from my observations. How do you think?
Yeah, I think so. We are very privileged because, I mean, because my partner, he is not into IT, he is into robotics. So because of that, they cannot work, right? They need machines. They have to go to the office and they have to actually code at the machine. So we are so privileged that we can actually sit at home on a bed, sipping coffee and actually coding. So I think so we should leverage this and actually try to help people in this time. So if suppose someone is actually trying to get into software development, this is like a very good time, because even you have
exactly what we are doing at the moment. Helping other people.
Yeah, because you have so much time in your hand that you can actually manage your job and as well as mentoring someone. So I think so it's not that difficult, because you have saving like 2 hours probably for traveling, because for me that's the case. So if you decide to do it, you can do it, and actually if you help someone, it will help you as well, right?
Yeah, have you understand it again.
Exactly.
The extra concept.
It's like, do it for yourself, if not for the other person.
And I also think that is because we do a lot of remote working already. You know, like even before all of this pandemic happens, we have this practice of doing remote work and you know, communicate with teams from all around the world already. So we're kind of like this is like a usual norm for us. Whereas, you know, like other jobs requirements, people to be in person, to go into the office too often. And all of a sudden they have to transfer everything into online. So it's a lot more of the learning curve for those people in those sectors. How do you think, Mark?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I caught out of the corner of my eye that we have a question that I know I need to answer.
Yeah. So I was saying that because remote working. Yeah, the remote working, because it's part of our job that we have to, sometimes we work from home already, even before this pandemic, this virus thing happened. So we kind of, you know, like used to working like this and communicating with team from around the world online. So it's a lot easier for us compared to people who, you know, like not used to this type of, you know, working culture, you know, like other jobs have to come to the office.
Well, for sure. I mean, I can sense that, you know, I've adapted to this new from home reality, I think a lot faster than I'm seeing a lot of people around me adapt. You know, our work is essentially all online. So whether you're in an office or you're at home, you can most likely get the work done if you are diligent. That said, you know, I do feel there's a value of that face-to-face connection that, you know, we're kind of missing. And on the side of, you know, is our industry more resilient, or is the job itself more resilient faced with an uncertain economy? I think, and that, yes. Specific jobs, I don't know. You know, for example, I mean, with what I do, depending on how long things are, we have to keep up social distancing around the world. I mean, as I said before, it's a tennis app. You can't socially distance when you play tennis.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
But we're not afraid now. You know, we've got plenty. You know, as a team, we've got plenty we can do now.
And you can do different projects, right? Yeah,
And you know, and so I would say we're able to overall. I would say a lot of tech jobs are able to weather this storm better. And you know, even moving forward beyond this, I would say, you know, you said something earlier about how you change industries. I mean, prior to this, I was terrified to change industries in a way, you know, from going into education management to getting into, but now what I realize is basically what I do is as a coder, what I do is I take your situation, your problem, your service you want to deliver, and I find a way to bring technology to that. And so that's always going to be there, I think, as long as we have an internet and we have computers and you know, all of that.
So you saw the questions from the audience. You want to answer that one? Maybe you can read it out loud.
The discrepancy between, well, no, I wanted to definitely soften what I may appear to have said. It wasn't that, there wasn't a huge discrepancy. I mean, the interview process that I went through, I would say 95% of it definitely applied to choosing whether or not I'm a good candidate for the job that I was doing. And I think in most cases it's like that. It's just you hear and you hear of these interviews, and you also go through them yourselves where it's extremely technical. And I think, yes, in part, there's a justification for it. But what I felt is, you know, with other interviews that I actually thought I had failed, because I had sat there for 3 hours trying to write code on a piece of paper to solve problems. It was for a company that's based out of Israel, and the owner had been a coder for 50 years, so it was a really hardcore.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't 3 hours. It may have been an hour, where I wrote out the code to solve some problems, And at the time, I didn't know anything about O notation. And and the question said as close as possible to, and it gave a specific, it gave specific like notation that I had never seen before that interview ever in my life, because I hadn't, really, it was the first interview I ever took, basically. And I did get offered that job. And what I realized, and the reason I'm saying this now, is that a big part of the interview is testing how you react to the situation.
Correct. You don't
People
need to know everything.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you don't need to freak out. I'm willing to bet that a lot of people go into those interviews and they come out looking like, or maybe angry or complaining or whatever. And that's part of what they're looking for. They want to see who takes it with a good attitude.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, even now that we, like we're in a good position in our job in tech, but I could keep on, like recalling, there's so many failures, like underlying statements, but I failed so many times, and there's certain times that, I almost gave up. But I mean, it's also about your attitude, right? Like how you're reacting to certain situations and how you react to your failure, and learn from it, and continuing on having that, momentum to kind of push your limit, pushing yourself. I think that's very important. Yeah.
I heard this famous quote. So it's not rejection, it's redirection. So you will be redirected to a company which is right for you. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Probably that's going to be my most favorite quotes from now on too. It's redirection. Cool. So again, our audience, if you have questions, please feel free to share with us and put it in the chat box. We'll gladly answer all of your questions. Okay, so we'll come back with, so I think we talk about the flexibility of working in tech. So I would say from I've seen a lot of cases for women with family or women with kids, like working in the state, and they have different policy for women. They have nursing room, they have other things. So from your own perspective of like how is like being flexible in your work environment, say like in Singapore, how is like you're allowed to work from home all the time, you're allowed to based on like project base or KPI rather than like put in the timesheets or etc.
Okay, so we have like unlimited work from home. If you want to do, you can just work from home, because my team actually doesn't actually stay in Singapore. My team entirely sits in Australia and India. So yeah, so actually
you can come visit me.
So I think so. That's not a problem. But what I think so I've observed is over here, at least in my company, we tend to go to work and actually do our jobs. Like most of us are always in the conference rooms. But then, it gives us a chance to interact with our Singapore team. Because if we just stay at home and keep on working, we tend to not interact with our team in Singapore. And we have like around 45 people in engineering, which is HPSC for Singapore. So I think so flexibility, if you are like in very much need of it, your company should be willing to do that. But there shouldn't be, like, I mean, don't train yourself with actually having that flexible environment, because not every company gives that. So if you get used to that environment and you unfortunately get a job in a company which doesn't allow that, it would be very hard for you to adapt, and you might not be that productive at your work, even though the job is good, but then, because of this thing, it's not there. So never get used to like a particular culture which a company follows. Adapt easily from one company to another, because based from my experience, I've worked for 3 companies. So my first company, it was like I used to code for at a stretch 16 hours, 17 hours, 24 hours also. So that was like, because I just had passed out of college, and then we were just coding. Then I moved into my next company, which was normal. But for me, it was like they are not at all, using me. I'm not doing that stuff and stuff like that, because I was so used to that mindset. but then I adapted easily, and then I came to Singapore, and it's very different. So every time I was like, okay, now I'm settled, and then I change my job. So I have to restart the cycle. So I think so that's a good way to not actually get used or be complacent. You should know when you are getting complacent at your job. It can be in terms of your skills, or it can be in terms of if you're not learning anything new, or if you're not feeling threatened or challenged. You should feel that you don't know stuff. Oh God, what are they talking about? I really don't know. You should always feel that. Once the day you stop feeling that, you should change the company. I feel
that's so true. I mean, for what you're saying is like being flexible and adaptive with the working environments.
correct.
But at the same time, you should have your all discipline, in terms of
Yes.
what you want to learn and how you want to grow in terms of your skill sets and your career path.
Because if you're not disciplined in tech, you will not succeed. You will not break that barrier and actually go to the next level. You will be just like you'll be a mediocre developer, but then you need to have self-discipline that, okay, I've decided I'll do this. So even if no one is watching, you should be able to be productive and deliver and then learn stuff. So you're not dependent on someone else's goals. You're dependent on your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of flexibility, I think there are two aspects of flexibility that attracted me to the tech industry. One was the fact that you have to always be learning something new. Like somewhere way back when I realized that just seemed to be a common trend, is that everybody seemed to be constantly adapting, learning something new, and never getting stagnant. And it was a huge appeal to that for me, because previously I had done sort of the same role for almost 10 years. I mean, in slightly different capacity in two different countries, but it was essentially the same thing. It wasn't boring, but I had the sense that, okay, I'm only stretching my mind so much here, and it was great while I did it. And for the amount of time I did it, because again, in two different countries, I was able to, to learn quite a lot from that experience in business, in management, in how to work with large systems, in terms of I don't mean systems of computer systems, but the dynamics of operating a large business. But when I left, I just, there was something about tech that was calling to me, that was saying, no, this is every year you're going to get to learn something new if you want to. And that's quite exciting. The second one, I would agree on the flexibility. For me, it's great. I do love I like to be in a different place all the time. So I don't like to go to the same office every single day. I like some days to work at home, some days to work in the office, some days to work in a cafe. And I can be productive in all of those places. But I would agree, don't get married to an idea that it's always going to be exactly what you want. I don't know how long. Currently, I work remotely. Even before, I was working remotely because I'm mainly working with the team in our client team in Germany. So I'm not in Germany, so I don't have to be. I can't be in Germany, so I'm here. But in 3 or 4 months, maybe things will change. I will have to go into the office 5 days a week, and then I have to adapt to that. It's fine. The core is the work, and you have to be flexible as well. Right? Although I do understand that if you're really, really, really good at what you do, there's a good chance you can get remote only work. That was something that appealed to me initially. Less now. I don't think I would want one of these jobs where you're only remote. You don't interact with the team at all.
Yeah.
You're not involved with the people. You're just coding, getting a job done, getting a paycheck. That's for me, that's not what it is. But it does possibly exist out there.
Yeah, I do agree with you about because things are constantly changing. So whatever skill, whatever technical knowledge that we're learning, we have to constantly update it. So it's give us a sense of like growth, that you're learning something new, that you're, like keeping up with what's out there. And I think this is one of the critical factors in terms of, determining what career path that you're going to choose. Actually, that's one major reason why I want to transfer into tech from a non-tech background, because I want to keep on continuously learn. Because as I keep on learning, I feel that I'm, like come alive, and I'm adapting to, like what's out there, and I'm not being left behind with all this technological, advance that I don't understand. So those are the things that keep me transferring into this tech. And I agree with all of you about, that we should all have to, have self-disciplines and not to, get comfortable with, the current work cultures and then just expecting things to happen the way we want always, because it's not going to happen. Yeah, so I think we do have second questions. I'm a fresh graduate in automation industry. Is this possible for me to switch into coding industry? What can I do to start? Anyone want to take the questions?
I can actually answer that because one of my friends recently did that. So what I would suggest is at whatever company you are at, just pick up some dev tasks, small tasks, and start pushing your PRs. So if your company supported, they would allow that. So luckily in my friend's case, the company was very supportive and all the developers actually helped that. Actually helped him to actually pick up the development task, and then you keep on coding stuff in your free time, because in all of our job profiles you don't have to code 8 hours a day. So you will always have free time. If you take out like an hour and just code, like actual pure coding, you just write something on your editor and get some output done. I think so if you start doing that continuously for 30 days, you will be, I think so, more fluent than most of us, because we don't code every day 8 hours. We hardly code like for 3 hours or probably 4 hours. So and one more thing I wanted to add was I think so it's with the flexible point of view. When you're working, so even though most of the companies give flexible arrangements, I would, yet you should be prepared that sometime if the workload is high or if you have a release, you might have to stretch, you might have to stay awake, or get out of your comfort zone. You might not get sleep, or so I think so you should be you should have that mindset prepared that okay, if this thing happens, it's okay. You should be able to handle it. You should not panic or feel like, okay, what is this happening, I cannot do it. So coding is actually not a 9 to 5 job. You might be required at 10 p.m. or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. because some of the deployments happen at night. So you might have to stay awake. You might have to just get up out of your sleep and start coding. So, have that mindset that you can do it. That's it.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. The the 3 a.m. or the 4 a.m. for sure. And it's definitely something that you if you never want to do it, I mean, nobody, with the teams that I've worked with, nobody wants to do it necessarily. Like, you want to avoid having that to become necessary. You have very few people who, really want to stay up until 5 a.m. to finish a job. But they also don't want to have to pull everybody else along with them to do it too. So, if you're, so it's quite important to, and additionally, down to, can you switch from being a fresh graduate in automation? Yes.
Like,
yes.
we can do that. We're actually from a totally different background, non-tech background.
I stopped my job at 36 and, well, or 35. Oh, I'm almost 38. I stopped my job at 36, and now 2 years later, I'm coding. I mean, it's an entirely different thing. I had no prior experience with coding. So yes, you can.
I think it's amazing.
What can you do to start it? Sorry. Yeah.
I think it's amazing because, like, coding is doesn't matter what your genders, what your age, what
Yeah.
your backgrounds are, educational background. So as long as you have the willing to learn those and being very adaptive and having that, like good attitude, keeping things moving and learning always, then you can do it. So it doesn't matter. That's how we did it ourselves. So we understand, and we actually the example and the proof that you can totally do it. Okay.
One more
What can
thing
you
I
do to
can.
start it?
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to give one more tip because I just realized it. If you are actually planning to do it, give yourself a deadline that, okay, by
That's
this month, I will apply and I will actually go for that interview and give that interview. Or,
Mm.
ask my team member or something like that. So always, I think so, because if you say, okay, I'll start doing it, then you will never have like a end date. So you will keep on doing it. And after a year also, if somebody asks you, you'll be like, no, I'm still preparing. I'm still preparing. So, it's better like you give yourself a deadline that, okay, I am going to do whatever I can in those couple of months. And then that's it. I'm just going to apply. If I get rejected, that's fine. If I get the job, then
Yeah.
well done. So,
I was just gonna say you'll never be ready.
yes, you'll
Mm.
never be ready.
So, and the best, and when you said if you get rejected, that's fine. I was thinking exactly
Like,
that
yeah.
the less time you've taken and the less sort of prepared you are in a sense, um, the easier it is to say, I didn't get that because I hadn't made enough effort, and not I didn't get that because I've worked for 3 years to try to learn how to program and prepare for interviews, and I'm terrible and I'm not intelligent enough. This is
Imposters. Yeah.
if you wait too long, that will be your fear, and your first
Yeah.
rejection will be bigger.
Yeah.
It's
That's
better
so
to get your first rejection, because everyone's going to get a first rejection, I think.
Yes.
I got rejected
Really.
all the time. Okay.
too. It's so
So we move
difficult.
so we move into the next questions. Do you think studying in the precious university would be a huge advantage for you to get a good job in the tech field?
No,
Yeah.
No.
not anymore. I mean, if you
Or
are brilliant, if you can code, you can get a job at any company.
Yeah. It's
I
more like
feel that,
results based rather than the degree, right?
yeah,
Sorry, Mark.
I absolutely. I feel this is even more true probably in Canada and in a lot of Western markets, and as you've confirmed, then in Singapore, prestigious universities just there because. With the exception of maybe having a computer science degree, which gives you all the background and everything, but I mean,
Or like from
most
MIT.
people most people most
You,
people want people who are willing to do the work that it takes to get the job done. And I mean, as a former person who was a hiring manager, I can't speak for hiring managers in the industry of IT, but if I were to map my experience from what I would look for for an entry level job in my old industry to what I would be looking for if I were hiring now for IT, I would want people who had to work for it and who took it upon themselves to work for it. So the people who taught themselves, the people who did a boot camp or something like that. Yes, my company would have to provide the right environment for them to then learn and thrive. That's important, right? But I think it's more important that you show the results exactly, like
yes.
your sample projects, the things that you have done, the ideas that you have taken and taken them from a wireframe and put them on and end to end. Ideally, if you can take the design and go, if you've got an idea that you had, even if it's a silly, like online delivery pizza service that delivers in Hello Kitty boxes, I don't know, and you think that's going to be the best business idea. If you've done some really bad code and put the backend server up and hosted it somewhere with even a really bad design, that's going to look better than a lot of kind of cookie cutter results, right?
And
People
you
want to
should
see that.
write bad code. Don't you agree, Mark? That we should write bad code because it gives you motivation to actually start doing that. Because if you wait for it,
We
no, I have
will.
to. Yeah, for that optimized code, it is never going to happen. It's like you will never.
I still write bad code every day and then I fix it.
Yeah.
You just have to fix it before you actually
Break
produce it.
something else.
Yeah. No, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I don't know if you would agree, but you can get blocked if you're trying to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. Like the first thing that I do if I have to write a new component for something is just go and write the first thing that comes to mind that gets the job done. I can fix it later.
Yes.
That's so true. Yeah. And when things are working, don't fix it.
Yeah. No, get the output
Okay.
and then focus on optimization. That's it. So
Right,
at least
right.
you know that something is working, and then you can just push it.
And it also avoids this whole blank page syndrome, right?
Yes.
If you're looking at, if you're looking at this big problem and you haven't done anything, I think in coding, like in anything else, actually reminds me of painting. Like the first thing you want to do if you want to paint a painting is, but if you're painting a landscape, throw some blue on the sky and some green on the ground, and there you go. You've got the beginning.
That's exactly what I do. That's exactly what I do every time I do my painting.
Yeah. Same.
Okay, I think we're gonna move into our last discussion topics. We still have about like 15 minutes left. If you guys want to ask questions, this is your chance. Okay, so since this is an International Women's Day series event, I would love to have like a discussion about women's role in tech. Maybe I should start with Mark first from a man perspective.
Hey, I don't know if that's appropriate, but okay.
We're just trying to do things a little bit different this time.
My perspective is that there really aren't enough, and the reasons for them are mostly imaginary. In fact, it's an incredible lack. Like all of the things that you put up on that slide in the beginning about these perceptions that it's too dry for women and everything. We were just talking about this, the creative aspect of it, and I strongly believe that even where things are moving, that the creative approach to development is going to become more and more important, especially as a lot of the more dry sides of it become automated. I mean,
that's so true. Yeah.
What I'm working on now, the writing unit tests for what I do right now is the easiest thing in the world because it's all, and automating that's simple. What's hard is the creative side of it. And that's not an area that typically, I don't think that men are supposed to be better at or anything like that. But I personally believe that men are not better at anything than women are, but anyway.
Yeah, I do believe that, like your intelligence and your capability isn't based on gender, isn't based on, what you're, like born as, boy or girl or any other different type of gender. So it's just a matter of, like we really try our best and, like put in the effort to continuously learning and growing. And I agree with you that it's not about, like really coding anymore, but it's more about problem solving, and it's require a lot of creativity involved. And especially amongst, like there's so many frameworks now that are trying to make things a lot simpler, easier for us to, like we have components and we just, like kind of plug it in the code base, and we don't have to, like create things from scratch, and we have APIs and all the jazz. So now it's just a matter of like, how do we use those tools and how to use those creative problem solving to make things work. Okay. And what about you, Iowa? How do you think about women's roles in tech from your perspective working in Singapore?
We need more female in tech. I don't think so. It's a lot. In my team currently, I'm the only female developer. So yeah, it's weird. And that was the same case in my last company as well. Weird. So
I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, because we generally, I mean, I don't know. I think so. Yeah, I agree with Mark that all of the reasons why you cannot be in a tech, like as a female, are all imaginary. You just get into it. I think so everything else falls into place. I think so the thing which a lot of female lack is they don't have a mentor, or they don't have someone to support them, because if you don't have that, you will probably just drop that idea. But if you have a female mentor whom you can look up to, then you would actually, try to explore that field. So I think so having more female role models is very important to increase the number of female in tech. That being said, I think so we also need to I mean, not based anything on the gender, which, as you said, right, the intelligence and I actually, I highly doubt if intelligence. I do not believe in. If you're hardworking, you can do anything. So
That's a yeah. I agree.
I mean, we're not geniuses over here as coders. The
exactly.
majority of us, except for some of those people that you put up on the slide in the beginning of, none of us has revolutionized the world.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you're hardworking, you can get a very good job. You can be very successful and have a very good life. You don't have to be intelligent. That's fine. Nobody's going to ask how intelligent your IQ points in your interview. No, they're just going to ask you whether or not you can solve that problem. And if you've worked hard enough, you can easily do that. So I think so we have to stop that okay, only guys have that kind of brain logical analytical part, which because of which they can code. And coding is not a big thing, actually, I feel. And we need to actually, a lot of developers already know that, because most of our code, we go to Stack Overflow, we search something. It's not like we have not written everything from scratch, right? We take help from a lot of resources. So we should be open about it, that okay, even though I'm a senior developer, I do take help from Stack Overflow, I do take help from online resources. So if I can do it, even you can do that. You can just go learn something, do something, and then search the error or do something more. That's how you learn. So I think so you really just have to start. That's it. If you want to start, everything falls into place.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We just need to start. We just need to like put on the effort.
The good thing about developing is that, because I'm thinking that it comes down to, in many cases, a bit of limitation or limiting beliefs that people have. Either if the industry does tend to have, or if society does have this idea that it's not a skill set that many women have or whatever, which again is silly. It's not a skill set that anybody has without learning how to do it. Nobody was born knowing how to code. This is something we all have to learn, but it is something that you can easily prove to yourself that you can do, because all you need to do is produce something. I mean, you can't deny, if you've just like, the three of us have done, if you have an idea and you teach yourself and you go through what is going to, take time, like it's not, don't give up if you don't know how to do it after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or whatever. You will still not understand everything. I don't understand everything today, and this is 2 years later. You never get to that point where everything just holds.
Yes.
But after a reasonable amount of time, I would say, if you have a support, you take a course, or if you go online and teach yourself, you will be able to take an idea and make it happen. And when you have done that, there's your proof.
So yeah, it feels so rewarding. You feel so like accomplished with this, like just doing a code lab or like a code challenge by itself is already, like self-accomplishment. And with that small steps, and you can do into the next bigger chunk later on. So I agree with you totally that we can do, like taking small steps, and then we just have to put in our work right from the beginning and not procrastinating, because the longer that we just wait, the bigger the fear going to become later on. So I think we almost run out of time. So I'm going to give the floor for maybe one more questions. And as a start, I just want to conclude with this quote from the First Lady, Michelle Obama. Is one of my favorite quotes. When girls are educated, their country becomes stronger and more prosperous. So I hope that will apply to all our countries, to Vietnam, Singapore, Canada, and more. And please, follow our page and like our page to get more updates about what's the training materials that's come out. And we are here to help you with all your questions and concerns, even after this section is over. And we would like to get the feedback from the participants, so we know how to, cater your needs better for the next section as well. So you can scan this code on your phone, or I think our assistant already pastes on the message with the link to the survey. So please complete the survey so we know how to help you better. So I don't see any questions though. So with that, I would like to conclude this section today. And thank you so much for our amazing panelists who shared their experience and their stories and all of those, heart-to-heart conversation that I rarely see, that we have if we were to, go into some other, sections or workshops. I really appreciate that you guys spend time here today with us. Yeah, I hope you guys and everyone, please stay safe and healthy and continuously learn new skill and new things and improvement. All right, goodbye. You want to say goodbye to our audience? Okay, all right, goodbye. I'm gonna stop.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for helping out. Okay, I'm gonna stop the video here.